Hi, I'm Bob Canote, and on this episode of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, we're going to use this to solve our first problem on the Rouge Edition Jaguar XJS I recently acquired. It doesn't have a key, and neither does this. What are we going to do? Dang it. Now the problem with the XJS behind me here is that it doesn't have an ignition key. And if you don't have an ignition key, you can't even steer the car to get it in the shop. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to take one of these that actually does have a key and replace the ignition switch on that car with one that does have a key. And that means that at the very least, we can move the thing around to get it in the shop to work on it. So let's get on it. As I said earlier, the point of this exercise is to take that steering wheel lock assembly out, which does not have a key, and it looks pretty hacked up, like somebody's been trying to turn that with a screwdriver or something, and replace it with one of these that I've taken out of a parts car. Now, what you'll notice here is there has been a fair amount of hackery. I have no idea what that relay is for, but that's non-stock. You know, something like a sound system or an amplifier or something was added to this, and they went in there and got a hold of a circuit that is switched. And you can also see on this one that there's a fair degree of hackery that's been done on it too. So I'm gonna have to fix that and make sure that's right. This is so common on these cars. Now, as I said, the point of this is to replace this with this. Now, the problem is that we've got that screw. You see that thing in the middle there, that rough feature? This thing had another nut on top of it, and it was torqued in place to the point where that snapped off, and that was the appropriate amount of torque. So what we can do here is we can take a high-speed grinder, 4-inch grinder, and we can cut a slot in that and then use a screwdriver to take it out. Problem is, we got another one right there. And what we're gonna have to do is go to our own form of hackery to get that thing out of there, which I will demonstrate here in a little bit. So let's get started here. Normally what I would do is take the high-speed grinder, cut a slot across here. I'd end up scarring the aluminum casting here, but it's not a big deal. And then use a screwdriver to pull this one out. This one back here takes a little bit different technique. And in the interest of visibility, I'm gonna use that technique here so that you can see it a little better. Now you'll notice that I put 4 marks here on the screw that I want to remove so that you can see the rotation of it a little bit better than otherwise. The tool I'm going to use is a cape chisel here that I've sharpened to a very keen angle here in order to get a good bite on this thing. What I'm going to do is take this and I'm going to go straight in like this so I can develop a bit of a slot there. Then I'm going to turn it like this and start rotating it outward. Okay, that should be good enough. Now I'm going to go in at my angle. And it's starting to turn. And there it is. Didn't scar this up too badly. Now we need to do the same thing on the back side here. It's going to be a little bit more of an issue because we don't have the access that we did before. A little bit more hacked up than usual. This one was kind of difficult to remove with the camera in the way, but it came out. And then this should just pop right off of here, which it does. There you go. So at this point, it should be a simple job of taking the replacement lock cylinder and steering wheel lock and bolting it back in place with some screws, which you can get from places like Jag Bits and Welsh Enterprises and Engel Imports and so forth. But I've noticed that we got a problem here, and this is a real common one. You can see that the assembly here that holds the directional signal and the windshield wipers and that sort of thing, it's held in place by this screw right here that clamps this plastic collar down around the steering column. Well, as you can see right here, we got a crack there. Okay, it's not the end of the world, but we got to fix it. So what we have to do here, in order to get this directional signal, windshield wiper module off of here, is to remove the steering wheel and this adjuster, which we can use to locate the steering wheel fore and aft a few inches. If this is out of the car, it's pretty straightforward. What we got to do is we got to remove this bolt right here, which serves to clamp this assembly in place, and also this head screw here. Now, if it's in the car, what we have to do is we have to remove this plastic clamshell that is in two pieces, one on the top and then one on the bottom that hides all this stuff from those people that don't appreciate this sort of thing. It's pretty simple. Then it's just a matter of banging it off. Then it's just a simple matter of pulling this off and starting our repair. Now, in order to gain some clearance to this, what I'm going to do is remove the windshield wiper control so that we can gain a little better access to the area there. The next step is to remove the broken piece. The next step is to apply just a little drop of super glue to the broken piece and then hold it firmly against the first part. So now we got this glued together, and those of you who have done things like this before know that there's no way in the world that that glue joint right there is going to stand up to normal use. Well, it doesn't have to, because the next thing you need to do is you need to make one of these. This is made out of, I think it's 35 thousandths aluminum, and it fits like this. And the regular screw goes through there to clamp it down, and these three holes right here are drilled to allow some, I think they're number 6 screws, to go into the plastic. Now, obviously, the screws can't be too long because there's a cylindrical extension on the steering column that fits into there, and that would impede this all clamping down. So the fact is, it doesn't really matter whether that glue joint holds or not. This thing is actually doing the clamping. I've done this before. Works great. One thing I should mention before I move on is that we're going to be applying some super glue to this surface when we screw this down. So we've got not only the glue, but the screws holding it in position. And in order for that to actually work real well, you need to scuff this up. And I have yet to do it to the back side of this to give it some tooth so that it can hold on to it. But again, the glue isn't what's really doing the job here. It's this thing. And there's what it looks like when it's all fitted. Now what I've got to do is take this whole thing apart and glue everything together. You'll notice that we got screws sticking well out into that bore that we need to have clear for this to fit on the steering column. I'm going to run to the hardware store and see if I can find some shorter screws, but even if I can, I think I'm going to have to take the die grinder in there and trim them down flush. But as you can see, as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter if this glue joint breaks or not, or even if this joint between the aluminum piece and this hub here breaks or not. This is being held together by that aluminum strap, and it works great. And there we are. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a lifetime repair. The small screws up on top there, went to the hardware store, got some number 6 by 1/4 inch long screws. I just had to take a die grinder and just knock the very tips off so it could slide on. That's not breaking, unless of course you decide to really go hog wild and over torque it to the point where you break this one off, though I think that's going to be a lot harder because it's kind of molded into the whole body here. It's solid. Everything's working the way it should. Got a couple wires to plug in there, but time to move on to putting something in there. Now we're going to take this lock cylinder and lock, steering wheel lock, and make sure everything's working. Okay, it's locking. Turn the key. And it unlocks. Okay, this is ready to install. Rather than spending 16 bucks on the actual screws, what I did is I took the originals and put them on the lathe and cleaned them up a little bit, and then took the high-speed grinder and cut slots in them, and then I'm going to take some red Loctite, like they did at the factory, and torque them in. And that is ready to go in the car. Now there are those of you that are probably asking, well, why don't you just go to a locksmith, have them look up the information necessary to cut a blank and just forego this whole process? Well, you can do that, but the probability is, as I found out before doing all this work, that a locksmith will actually go to Jaguar and they will then send the information, your VIN number, over to the UK, I think the Heritage, Jaguar Daimler Heritage Foundation, that has the archives on this, and they will cut a key and they will send it to you, and then the locksmith will mark it up. So you might as well go to Jaguar themselves. It's going to cost $300, $350 to get this done. Now, what I just did, if you were to go online and find a steering column lock / ignition switch combination online with a key, you might be able to get by cheaper. Either way, it's not going to be a cheap thing. I just happen to have a couple of these with keys in them, and it just made sense for me to do it this way. I may at some point actually go to Jaguar and get a key for it, because these things aren't cheap to buy once you find them. If you've got another option, let me know. Put it in the comments down below, and it'd help everybody out. We're all in this together. Now, if you like these videos, like, subscribe, and maybe leave some comments down below so we know what we can do to do what we do better. And we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicles.